little bit away from that, employers are being warned to brace for a pandemic of workplace bullying claims as the government moves to make some changes to the system. According to the Australian Workplace Barometer, about 7% of workers say they have been bullied in the past 6 months, and every case costs employers between $17,000 and $24,000. These costs could set to rise though. The government's proposing anti-bullying changes to the Fair Work Act. It comes in from July, so we're not far off that. Let's talk a little bit about these issues in a bit more detail with Joydeep Hoare from People and Culture Strategies, who joins us now. Joydeep, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Coming straight from a New South Wales Chamber event that you've just been presenting at, talking about navigating the performance management minefield. So that sounds like a topic with plenty that you could have got into. Just give us a scope for what you're actually presenting on there today then.
Yeah, I think the whole issue of performance management is one that a lot of organisations have been struggling with for quite some time. It's one that's always exacerbated when there are economic pressures being faced by businesses where naturally there's higher expectations as to performance, and it's something that a lot of line managers feel very uncomfortable doing. They feel uncomfortable doing it at the best of times because it's perceived to embrace conflict, and it's not necessarily the most pleasant things to have to talk to employees about. So part of my messaging at this session was that there needs to be a bit of a paradigm shift for organisations around this. They need to start thinking about performance management as about as much harnessing positive performance from employees as it is about dealing with underperformance. It needs to become part of the fabric of how leaders within businesses communicate with their people. But all of this is happening in a very vexed external legal environment, and these proposed bullying changes certainly make the challenge all that extra bit harder.
Yeah, while you were presenting at the New South Wales Business Chamber event, I was reading an article that you were quoted in recently. The title was, "Are you a bully or a boss?" This kind of emerging thoughts about, which is what you're alluding to there, is this line between managing performance and bullying, where you're a manager and you might think you're offering feedback, or you think you're managing a performance situation. Increasingly, employees, you're finding, are using those events and saying, in fact, I was being bullied.
Well, that's right. And there's a couple of things that need to be said. One is, I think that bullying is fast becoming one of the most overused words in Australian workplaces, and it's very much being used by some employees as a sword, as a step to shut down what an organisation is seeking to do by way of quite legitimate, in most instances, conversations with that employee about their performance. Quite often, when you actually get into the detail of bullying claims, they're nothing more than interpersonal dislike, conflicts, things that, while they're not ideal, do happen. Employees shouldn't have to put up with any behaviours in a workplace context that make them feel unwelcome or upset, but as to whether they should be labelling that conduct bullying is, I think, one of the real challenges that organisations face. So I call that the relabelling imperative that organisations need to have to work with. Now, when you throw into the mix that the government has now tabled into Parliament proposed changes to the Fair Work Act, whereby if a person feels they've been bullied, they will now be able to commence a claim in the Fair Work Commission. That commission will have 14 days within which it has to do something in response to that complaint or the claim that's filed. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, I think, that there will be a decided outcome in that 14 days, but there'll probably be some steps taken. But what I think has caused quite a bit of alarm is that the Fair Work Commission is proposed to be empowered with the ability to make any orders that it sees fit, with the exclusion of monetary orders. Now, having reflected on that in a fair bit of depth over the last week since this was tabled, you can't rule out that the Fair Work Commission may well be empowered to say to an organisation, OK, I've looked into this bullying claim, I find that this person was bullied, and I'm ordering you to move that person into another area of your organisation. I'm ordering you to displace that line management relationship, perhaps issue some form of disciplinary action to the person who's found to be a bully, or any number of other things. So we're talking about an unprecedented level of potential interference by the Fair Work Commission into how an organisation runs its business and its line management responsibilities and work allocation issues. And I think that that's really quite dangerous, and I wonder whether that's really been fully thought through in terms of how that'll play out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. These things can be difficult to bring up if you're, if you feel like you've been bullied by a manager. In some ways, it seems like it will be quite easy to go to the Fair Work Commission and say, I've been bullied, before they've, it's even dealt with within the workplace itself.
Well, absolutely. I think the real danger for organisations, and it's something that they should really pay careful attention to, is that I think there is going to cease to be any incentive for an employee to work with the organisation's internal processes when they are guaranteed some action from the Fair Work Commission within 14 days of going external. And I think that for a lot of people, they will prefer that external audience and that external avenue of redress rather than working within an organisation's internal processes.
So what did you say at the New South Wales Business Chamber event about how businesses should be managing these issues?
Well, I think first and foremost, the law is quite clear that legitimate performance management is not bullying. And organisations and line managers should understand that they actually have a social, legal and ethical responsibility to give their team members legitimate feedback on their performance. That needs to be done fairly. If it needs to be done robustly, it needs to be done robustly. Now, there is nothing wrong with feedback that is stern, assertive, that makes it clear that if there's not improvement there could be consequences. All of that falls well short of bullying, at least insofar as the performance management context is concerned. But line managers are also busy people. They've got other things to manage. Managing people is only one part of what they do, and they're going to need to be given a lot of comfort that in so doing they're not going to be contravening any external laws. Have you ever heard the opposition comment on these matters? I mean, what's their view on all of that? Well, I think that the formal position of the opposition on these particular changes has yet to be articulated. As we know, the government the opposition hasn't released its detail from a broader IR point of view, and probably won't for a number of months. But I expect that there'll be a lot of people in Senator Abetsa's ear in the upcoming weeks around the problems of this particular legislation, and I just wonder whether that need to strike a balance between stamping out real cases of bullying as opposed to making every single workplace conversation translate into a potential bullying claim has potentially gone a little bit awry in this. Joy Paul, great to touch base with you. Did the event go well today? Sorry, Brooke, I missed that. Did the event go well today? Yes, it did go well, yes, thank you. Fabulous. It's always a lively topic and generates good discussion. Yes, exactly. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Joy Paul, People and Culture Strategies.